There are people who will probably never get married for one reason or another, and your birth chart can definitely show you that. So, I did have two videos called Never Married in Astrology, and they are both up. And I used examples of both men and women that are obviously famous. I didn't feel comfortable dipping into clientele or anything like that, but there are several reasons why people do not get married. Astrology can definitely show you that this person has a low probability of matrimony in this lifetime, another person has a high probability, whatever. The thing is, some people do not marry by choice, and most people that don't marry, though we tend to think something's wrong with us, it's actually that you just don't find a match that really resonates with you, okay? So you can see this in a birth chart quite easily, and I'm going to refer to some of the charts I did in those two videos, which I'm going to link in the description here, just from memory. But I got gifted an amazing book that was on my wish list from my wonderful friend Katie. So it's Predict with Navamsha. And there are only a few reasons or a few ways to see denial of marriage in this part, but I mean, this part of the book, but there are a lot of ways that you could see if somebody will probably not marry, or better to word it as a person who would just do better without marriage. That's the truth. Some people just live better, happier lives without getting married, but big capitals, bold, underline, italicize. It doesn't mean that they don't have a life partner. Okay, so they can have children, they can have a domestic life, lots of things. One of my teachers in our coursework, they showed a charts and divisional charts of one of their clients that has had a 30-year relationship, and then went to separate. They had several children together and then found another partner for like 20 years. They're much older now, or maybe they're dead even, but yeah, they didn't legally get married. It was a man. Okay, so he did have like partners, like I suppose like spouses that weren't legally binding, but they were bound under common law and they had children. That the union was fruitful, it produced a big family. So that's the distinction I'd like to make. So if people sometimes hear that they have denial of marriage, they believe that they will never find love. That's not what that means. So you have to leave. I have to make this kind of a lengthy introduction because I feel people don't listen. But you have to understand the nuance of life, which becomes a lot easier with a lot of life experience. So in any case, or maturity or something. But okay, many things to look out for. So number one, when you get a love reading, for example, from myself, we definitely cover the capacity that person carries to relate to other people. If that is low, you can still obviously get married and fall in love. If that is high, doesn't mean that you will, but it makes life a lot easier if you have if you have a high capacity for romance and you actually know how to use it, okay? So we measure that, and then the most important thing when it comes to marriage is the state of the seventh house. But that's not the only house. Okay, so you'll hear this a lot if you have a trashed seven house, whatever. A big one that people use to scare viewers or their clients is South Node in the seventh. So K2 in the seventh house. Let's say, oh, marriage will not be any good if you get married. You probably won't get married, and so forth. I'm not. I think it's South Node that Jennifer Aniston has in there. She has a crushed Venus. It's really doing poorly. It's like smushed with like Saturn and Sun or something like that. But she was obviously married twice and then divorced twice, okay? So the way around that with K2 is to put spirituality first. So if you're religious, you put God first. If you're spiritual, you put God first. And then if you actually want to get married and stay married, you make that the basis of your relationship. So if you're a meditator, you find a meditator. If you're a tantric, you find a tantric. If you're a Catholic, you find a Catholic or something that works for you, okay? That's just the way it goes. So the other thing to look out for is the ninth. So the ninth is what we actually call the condition of marriage. It is the house of legalities, it is the house of tradition and institution, and marriage is a legally recognized institution, a union between two people. So according to VP Goel, any planet in the ninth house can be troublesome for marriage in the D1, in the actual birth chart, your Rashi chart. In the D9, the Navamsha, he says this is also true. Okay, so for example, let's say you have okay, South Node in the ninth house in the D1, and then Venus in the ninth house of the D9. So would you say that person will or will not get married? Well, it depends on a lot of factors, right? Is the health of their seventh lord and seventh house and the D1 and the D9 healthy? And then don't forget that when we're looking at a final answer, the finalities will come from other divisional charts. So the D60 is the obvious one, which we had a very lengthy live today on TikTok. And just this is why we did 4 live readings, and this is why we discussed these things. However, the D30 is another one. So if there is an affliction to the seventh house and the seventh lord in the D30, it can also aid in preventing marriage, okay? Or happy marriage. So if you want to be happy, like some people say, I just want to get married. Some people say, I want to be happily married. So I think you want to be happily married. If you want to be happily married and marriage isn't looking likely, then just stick with happy partnership. But that's up to everyone. Okay, you do what you want. I do what I want. You do what you want. Okay, obviously, a malefic in the seventh house in the birth or Navamsha, he says, and any planets in the ninth. In case marriage takes place, even then the person does not enjoy marriage. Okay, so it's too much. This is sort of like the paradox of life. Like the most powerful people are usually the softest and most compassionate and understanding, right? Because they're strong, they don't have to flaunt that. So in a way, actually even having a benefic can be an issue. And you will know this, people who have Venus in the seventh house, you think it's good until you actually put it into practice. It's not that great. Okay, in the D9 also, Venus in the seventh is, it gives a lot of problems. Okay, why? Because it can cause people to wander, it can cause them to and not all people, I want to mention that there's an exception. But anyway, let's say I did read for someone today, and one of my favorite people to study is I forget his name, the guy who founded Twitter, the cool like hippie tech dude who like doesn't get under everyone's skin and on their nerves. Jack something, I think it was a Dorsey, something with a D, Dorsey, maybe Jack Dorsey. Anyways, he has a Venus K2 conjunction in the seventh house of his D9. I believe he's never married. That would make a person really spiritual. That would make a person very, very much prone to be on the dharmic path, to do what's best, to share their maybe talents with the world or serve the world and bind themselves to other people, you know, like to be in service of humanity, for example. So a friend of mine that was on live today, I believe they have it in their D9. I believe so. I just looking at it today, and they are really here to help people. You know, they can take they've had many relationships, they'll have go on to have relationships, but the point is you take your love and you give it in service of something bigger than yourself, which is a great form of love. But you'll still have personal relationships. It's just that when we're looking for specific things like legal marriage, it's not so likely or even necessary. That's another thing. K2 does away with things, so it wouldn't even make them happy if they got married. It would be like, what have I got myself into? They're much happier being free. Okay, these people like freedom. And that's another thing. Venus K2 conjunctions can also cause people to get very restless in relationships where they don't get their way, because you shouldn't upset Venus. Venus is a planet, obviously, deals a lot with women, but she's very acidic because she rules sugar. So Venus is actually by nature coercive. So she will melt through things, okay? She will destroy them if they annoy her. So if you have a Venus K2 spouse and you don't give them freedom, then there's going to be problems. Venus Rahu are friends, but Venus K2 is fine. It's just that they need the freedom to be who they are. If you don't give it to them, it's over for you. Okay. Another one is that the signifier of marriage in your, so number one, if your seventh house is trashed. Number two, planets in the ninth should be inspected very closely. Number three, you need to check the D30 and the D60. Number four, I'm going to say, look at your D9. Look at the D9. If you're a woman looking for a man, is Jupiter in the first house. If you're a man looking for a wife, is Venus in the first house. If you're a lesbian looking for a wife, is Venus in your first house of the D9. And if you're a man looking for a husband, is Jupiter in your first house of the D9. These are known as signifiers of mates. So they signify Jupiter is a husband to a man or a woman. He's your husband. Not Mars, Jupiter. Venus is the wife to the woman or to the man. So if they are in the first house of the D9, it can also cause some problems, okay? So look at those and run through those and see what the odds are basically. Now, another thing too, on top of those, all those things I just mentioned, there's a method in Gemini astrology that is very useful and I have found to be the clearest one ever. And that is, Vedic astrologers will know, but if you're new and you're learning, look up the Upapada Lagna. The Upapada Lagna should be unblemished, free from restriction. Restrictions, limitations, afflictions, anything like that, to increase the probability of marriage. And you will check it in the D1, the D7, the D9, and finally the D60. If the first three charts, the Upapada Lagna, is not looking so strong, but it's powerful in the D60, that has the final say. You will be married, vice versa. The first three can be stellar, and the D60 is shite. Okay? It's not likely. It's just not likely. Okay. There's a difference between possibility and probability. Anything is possible. With God, all things are possible. I believe this, truly. Okay, you know me, I'm a praying person. But when we look at a chart, we can tell the probability of something, and we can also tell why it's not probable. So some people, as I mentioned, they just don't get along. They don't play well with others. So sometimes it's them. They need to be more congenial. They need to be relationship literate. They need to be considerate of others and anticipate their needs, but they don't want to do that inner work. So whoever they meet, they'll find a problem with them and they won't be happy. Okay, let's say we started with K2 in the seventh. K2 in the seventh makes you hypercritical of other people. So no one's going to be good enough for you. And then you'll let anyone in your life and then they let you down. You see what happens when I don't have standards? It's like you just have to kind of meet yourself somewhere in the middle, okay? Other times people don't want that for themselves, okay? K2 can also kill interest. So this is another thing we spoke about on the live a lot today. Quite a few people came through. Quite a few people came through with K2 in the ninth. So I believe those videos, I did Alexander Skarsgård. I think Bill Maher has it. Winona Ryder has it. Maybe Charlize Theron, if I remember correctly. But I know those three probably have it. K2 in the ninth. Okay, so the ninth house is orthodoxy. It's tradition. Okay, it's linked to the Hierophant card of the tarot. So naturally, it's things that this is why the eighth house is taboo, because the 12th from the ninth breaks tradition. And this is dangerous because in older times and more traditional, even now in more traditional cultures, people live together. Okay, they cooperate and they're very cohesive. They're not so insular, but they stick together. So basically, if you have Ketu in the ninth house, you are not interested in marriage. I think Bill Maher made mention of that quite a bit. But even if you are, you're not interested in marriage that's been prescribed to you, if that makes sense. People are like, well, when you get married, you have to sleep in the same bed, in the same room, do the same thing at the same time. Blah, blah, blah. And I've seen this a lot. Those people, they don't care for tradition. They shun tradition. I would even say that's true of all malefics in the ninth, okay? Any malefic in the ninth, these people want to do things their way. And you have to remember, the ninth is a trinal house. It's very, very positive. It's an auspicious house. And malefics don't like being in good houses. They don't like rules. And you're giving them rules when they have their own set of rules. They're not flexible. They're not easygoing. They're not chill. So basically, when you put them in the ninth house, that person wants their own bedroom. They want their own master bedroom, or they want their own bathroom, or they want their own bed, or they don't want to eat at the same time. I remember one of my coworkers, like a long time ago, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, I said, but you have children, like, and he was married to a physician. I said, don't you like eat dinner? Because you get off work at the same time. Like when your wife comes home and God knows like what hour, she was like working for 12 hours or something. Like she's a doctor. Like, do you make dinner? Like who makes dinner? And he said, that's not practical. And I said, what does being practical have to do with it? Like love isn't practical. You do because you love that person. He said, no, we just eat whenever we're hungry. So he's like, the kids can eat when they're hungry. I eat when I'm hungry and she eats when she's hungry and we just eat whatever we want. And I was like, that's so weird to me because I grew up dinner at the same time, home cooked. We never ordered, never, never, never. Okay. My mom ate it. We all ate it together. We sat at the table. We talked. We joked. We learned about the world. We told stories, right? So to me, that like shattered it like cracked my consciousness. I thought that happens in other people's houses. I didn't know that happened in other people's houses. But yeah, the malefics in the ninth were like, who cares? Your stomach's full. Who cares where you're eating? Who cares what time? Together or not? Like it's not a big deal. At the end of the day, we're still married, and this keeps rolling. Like we don't stop the world for anything. So it could be something like that, right? So it's not the end of the world. It's just that you don't want it to look how other people's marriages look. It could be more um, open or free spirited, an open marriage, for example, or it could be very conservative to the point where it's taboo even for your own culture. So go ahead, take a look at those things. Check the health of one's ninth house. You should, if you haven't gotten a love and spouse description reading, you can book one with me on gurugrit.com. We go over relationship capacity, we go over the spouse description, we go over windows of time that are very good for you to get out and meet someone. Obviously, how you meet, if any condition around that, if it's present, sometimes it's very convoluted. Sometimes you're not supposed to know. That's another thing. I know I'm not supposed to know. That's why I'm annoyed. Then, lastly, is any remedies. Okay, if there's issues with spouse. Okay, so that's another thing. Remedies, and then yeah, we check the Upapada Lagna to see probability of marriage and things like that. And yeah, maybe next video I'll discuss delay of marriage. Okay, late marriage. And yeah, thank you for watching. Happy New Year to you all. My goal is to actually post more on YouTube. I'll do my best. So just bear with me. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best and bye for now.